Hello and welcome to another Control-Delete tutorials video. What we're going to be doing today is looking at modular room creation, and it's looking at it in the way that can be used and replicated for in use in video games, primarily building things that you might see like in the PT demo, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with. If you're not, it's a demo for the Silent Hills game that will be coming out. And what I want to look at is how we can create very simple modular room sections to create basically any sort of house, hallway, system that you may want very simply. So we're going to start by breaking down very simple things that are easy to control within an environment like this. And when looking at an environment like this, it's very easy to see, okay, we got a really long hallway and it kind of dips in here and it goes around here. If we look at some of these other images, so this goes around the corner here. This is looking down from the other area. So it comes down the hallway, there's a door here, and this is kind of a bad picture, but I'm just grabbing ones from the internet that we can use, and creepy things, but we're not going to so much focus on creepy things, but we're going to look at what is this house really made out of, and kind of work from there. So that's what our demo is going to be about. So I'm going to start off in 3ds Max, and I'm going to change my grid. The reason I'm changing my grid is I'm going to change it to work off of values of 8 or power of two numbers rather than as it currently stands as 10. So I'm going to right click on my snaps toggle. I'm going to go to home grid and I'm going to set this to 8 by 8, and for this extension that I'm going to use, I'm going to make this pretty large just so it continues to extend out pretty far. Because the way I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be using my snaps. I'm going to use the grid points to snap. So I'm going to go to box, and the settings that I'm going to use for this, and I'm just going to do a keyboard entry. I am going to have them start at 0, 0, 0, but my length is going to be 240. My width is going to be 240, and my height is going to be 256. Now the height can vary depending on whether you need a second floor, and if that's the case, if there's going to be rooms above other rooms, we can make this a little bit smaller. That way we don't have our rooms ceiling from one room bumping into the floor from another room. So I'm going to click create, and if I zoom out here we'll see the box. Let me just make sure that I have my unit set up the way I want. So I'm going to use generic numbers. Okay, so I'm going to use 1 inch equals, or 1 unit equals 1 inch, and that's fine. I can do 1 equals 1 centimeter, but I want to make sure that right now that I'm in inches or centimeters. So I'm just going to click OK on that. I'm going to go to the modify panel, and I'm going to change the box that we have here to have more segments. So I'm going to do 4 by 4 by 4. And that's going to give me something like this. So what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to move the pivot point, because right now my pivot point for this object is in the center, and I want to move it down to the bottom left. The reason I do this is, let's say I'm building a bunch of rooms and they're going to be next to each other. It's easier if I have it so the pivot point's in the corner and I can snap it, especially if I'm in Unity or something like that. It makes it a lot easier to snap from corner to corner rather than center point to center point. So that's another thing. The other thing is I'm basing this off of power of two numbers. So right now the 240 that I have here for the width and height, not necessarily the power of two numbers that I would be normally dealing with. If you don't know what those are, easy enough, you can search. And if you look at power of two numbers, let's see. Mostly want to look at something that pertains to games, but let this open up here. So what this is going to allow us to do is to create sections and rooms, and if we stick to this number, things easily fit together over and over again. So let's see if they, okay, so this is what I'm looking for. So 2 to the power of 1 is 2, 2 to the power of 2 is 4, so we go 2, 4, 6, 18, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, and 1024. So right now the room sections that I've created are going to be based off of the size 256 by 256. The reason though that I've only done 240 and 240 is I'm allowing for a certain gap to appear between each one of these room sections, and I do that so that one wall is not automatically bumping up against another wall. There's always going to be a space there. So what I want to do is I want to go to the hierarchy panel. I'm going to go to Effect Pivot Point Only. I'm going to move my pivot point. Right now it's at 0, 0, 0. So what I'm going to do is move it at negative 128 by negative 128. And I'm going to turn that back off. So if we look at this in 3D view, in perspective, we can see that my pivot point lies just outside of here, but it falls directly on the grid, which is good. So let me just give you an example here. So I'm going to turn on my snaps, which are set to grid, and I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to move this, and I'm going to move it 256 units. Exactly. So what I get here is going to be a small gap. Now I do this because I want to have doors that go in between these objects, and I don't want my one side of my wall bumping into the other, because it creates what's known as z-fighting. Just to give you a quick example of what z-fighting is, you've probably seen it in video games, but let's say I've got one plane, and over top of that plane I've got another plane. I'll make this one slightly larger. Alright, so you see the flickering that's kind of happening there. That's called z-fighting. So if we have two pieces of geometry that are basically occupying the same space, they will fight for the ability to be seen in the viewport. And we don't want that to happen in our game. You've probably seen it happen in games and it looks very bad, but we want to try to minimize that from happening. So that's why I've made the room this way. The other thing I'm going to do is I need to be able to work from the inside of the room out. So what I'm going to do is go to the object properties. Okay, so backface call is on by default, just for the way that I have my 3ds Max turned on and set up, but I want to make sure that that is checked. So if it's not, go ahead and check it and click OK. The next part is I want to apply a normal modifier. And what this is going to do is flip our room basically inside out. So we're looking at the floor and the walls. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. So if we look at this now, I'm just going to go ahead and name this room section default. And I do that because all of my other rooms are going to be named off of this. And not only that, but all of my other rooms, all of the other rooms that I have are going to follow this naming convention. Actually, let's shorten that slightly. We'll just do room section abbreviated that way with default. So this is going to be my basic room section. So I'm going to keep this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and I'm going to move it down to the bottom corner here of my grid. Doesn't have to be exact, but I'm going to just put it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this and I'm going to create my floor and my ceiling from this. So I'm going to duplicate by holding shift, and I'm going to drag this over, and I'm keeping on the snaps just to make sure everything automatically lines up with that. So this is going to be called room section floor. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select polygon mode, and I'm going to delete everything that is not my floor. So now all I have left is floor. Now something I'm going to do is I'm going to account for the fact that I have doors that are going to be basically there will be holes here and the doors will go through. but there won't be any floor section there. So I'm going to account for that now. So I'm just going to let me work with a different color here too, just so we can see what I'm selecting. And I'll turn my grid off for a second just so we can see this. Okay, so I'm selecting here and here. Oops, hold Control, select both of those. I'm going to drag this out 8 units. I'm going to do that all the way around. And with my snaps being turned on, turn the grid back on. It allows me to do this like so. There we go. So again, here's what happens. So if I have a room set up this way, and I move this duplicated over 256 units, we can see that any area that's going to be sharing a door, there will be a floor section there. Okay, that's what that looks like. Okay, so go ahead and delete that, and that's going to be my floor. Now before I go too much further with this, I want to update the UV information on here. This is basically the information that allows us to apply a texture to this object. So I'm going to go to UVW map, and I just wanted to use a basic planar map, which is what I have here. And we can see that that planar map is going to be 256 by 256, and I'm very happy with how that's going to be. So I'm going to right click and convert that to an editable poly. Alright, so we have one section out of the way. The next one is going to be the ceiling. So I'm going to, actually, now that I have this one done, I'm just going to hide it, just to get it out of the way. So I'm going to do my next one. Also, I want to lock my movement here to just one direction. And right now it's set up in Max, and this is something that's happening in 2015, that they default to allowing you to move in all directions, which I don't technically like. So I'm going to right click again on here, go to Options, and I'm going to say Enable Axis Constraints. And I'm going to just close that. So now I'm able to highlight just the Y, just the Z, or just the X, or any of the combination. So that way I can just move this in one direction. Okay, so I'm just going to move that out as a copy. I'm going to call this one ceiling. I'm going to delete everything right there, and unless I'm crazy, that should be all I have to do there for the ceiling. Technically I could take the ceiling and drop this down slightly. I'm not that worried about that for this demo. I can always account for that later if I have to, but let's just say we're building a single floor unit here. So that's going to be my ceiling. Nothing really crazy to do there. It's also already unwrapped because it started off from a box. So that one's all set. So I'm going to take that. I will hide this. And now I'm going to start with my wall sections. So I'm going to just drag this out, and I'm going to name this one. So this is going to, I'm going to start a naming convention, basically so I know how many walls and how many doors that I have per any given room section that I'm creating. So this is going to be wall 1, so it has one wall, underscore, just to separate my naming convention. How many doors do I have? So this one's going to be door 0. I'm going to hit OK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my floor, that wall. Okay, come on keys, work with me. The ceiling. And what I want to end up keeping is this one wall. Now it doesn't matter if I want to keep this wall or this wall, but I prefer to keep a wall. Go to my top view here, let's see. I'll actually keep this one, so I'm just going to select everything here and deselect this bottom, or this back wall. So again, it doesn't matter, man, my shortcuts are just being really strange. It doesn't matter which wall I end up keeping, as long as I keep one that's at the same, that keeps the pivot point here. So let's make sure I got everything, and I do. Alright, so that is room section wall 1, no doors, because it has no doors. Okay, it's also already unwrapped, so I don't have to worry about that. But something that I'm going to do with this section is I want to create, actually I'll do this part after, but if we go back and we look at our references here, we can see that they have some molding. That's what we call it here in America, but we have some sort of molding, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But it's at the top and bottom of our walls. And let's see, one of these shows it really nicely. Or did I close that one? Maybe I closed it. Oh, yeah, you can see it here. So I'm going to end up creating that as well. But I'll do that in just a moment, because I need my one that's also a door. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and I'm going to duplicate it. And this is going to be called, well, it kind of got the naming right there. So this is wall 1, door 1. I'm going to say OK. And this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these 6 polygons, leaving me with a wall with a door. So what this allows me to do is, now if I wanted to make a room out of this, I'm going to turn off my snaps. I am going to turn on angle snap. Let's see. Tell you what, I'm going to angle snap to every, say 45 degrees. I'll do every 15. 45 will rotate really fast and it'll be tricky to deal with. So if I rotate this, you can see it rotates every 15 degrees, but I could simply create a room very easily. Let me turn my snap back on here. So I can make a room very easily by doing this. And I rotate this one 90 degrees that way. And I'll end up getting rid of these in a moment, but just to show you how this kind of works. Okay, so we can see there are 2 doors and 2 walls there. 4 walls, 2 doors. So we can see how easy that is. But if I'm bringing this into a game engine, I don't want to have to sit there and duplicate every single door that I create. It's kind of annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a bunch of different type of room sections based on what I need. Oh, I think I just erased one of my doors, huh? Probably that one. Alright, so I'll rotate that back 90 degrees. Yeah, that's the right one. But what else I need to do is I need to extrude this back. So I'm going to take each edge here and I'm going to go to move. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to do this in the top view just to make it easier. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to drag this back 8 units, or 1 section there. Alright, so that gives me my my wall. But what it doesn't give me is it doesn't give me any sort of molding or frame that we would have going around the door. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to do it on my previous wall here. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take the frame, or the polygons here. I'm going to turn off my snap for a second. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to drag it back to where it just pretty much lines back up with my wall. And this is going to be a new object for a moment, and I'll just call this molding. Doesn't really matter because we're going to end up attaching this back, but I am going to change the color of it just for a moment, just so we can kind of see what's going on. So if we go back to the reference, we can see that the molding basically comes out, goes up, comes out, goes up, and then kind of arches upward and then up again. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take these edges and drag this down. To where it's basically flat there. I'm going to drag this out, and then I'll go up, out, up. Let's see. So out, up, up. Okay. And then theirs looks like it does like a little in again. And then it's got this section that goes all the way up. So what I'm going to do is actually use Swift Loop oh, that's my bad, meant to turn that off, and change this to modeling Swift Loop. So I'm just going to divide these sections up pretty evenly, as evenly as I really can. That was pretty good, I gotta admit. I'm kind of awesome right now. Okay, so double click this edge at the top, and I'm going to hold Control and click Vertex just to select those vertices. Then I'm going to turn on Soft Selection, and I'm going to set my soft selection so that the curve that I have here, so this bubble section is going to basically be 1. So it's going to give me a nice smooth curve, and then I'm going to drag this fall off to where it just deselects the bottom row here. So I can say I got this kind of color fall off here. That actually goes the opposite way than I meant. Alright, sorry. Turn that back to 0. So it must be the pinch that I want to do. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. So 1, and yeah, that's what I wanted. So I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to turn off soft selection, go back to edge. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to drag this back up to 256. And that's going to be my piece of molding, or whatever you want to call it, crown molding, that goes at the top of the wall. Okay, so then, well, that's actually way higher than I wanted it to be. So I thought that looked pretty big. Alright, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to come to the left. Where is it? There it is. I'm going to grab all of this part. Shrink that down. Type in 256 for the height there. Wow, that's still way up there. Oh, yeah. That'll do it. Not that far. Okay. Okay, so that's 256. So we need all of this to come down just a bit further. So scale that back down again. Well, I was feeling awesome there for a second, then that happened. Alright, I was going to control backspace to remove some of those. I'm just going to scale that back to being flat. Alright, let's see what that looks like. looks a lot better. Alright, good. Now I'm not worried about the fact that there's this edge here and no polygons on the side, because this one wall, when it lines up, will line up with another wall and we won't see that. So that will help with that part. We could technically we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so that's going to be the one for the top. And then the bottom one is a little more simple. It's just a long section up. You can see it better over here. In, up, in, up, in. And we'll I opened Mudbox. Awesome. Well, that's going to open in a second. Alright, so we're going to take this bottom part here. That's going to hold shift, extrude that out, or not extrude, shift drag that out. I'm not even going to bother naming it because I will end up making this all one object back with the wall. So go ahead and make that one blue. Thanks, Mudbox. If you guys haven't used Mudbox before, it's cool. Just don't do it while you're doing a tutorial. Alright, so I'm going to take these sections, bring this down, and I'm going to take this whole thing and just bring this in a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to end up making this just a little more simple since we're doing a tutorial. Alright, so now what I can do is I can take these two sections and attach them together. Let me turn off realistic view here so we stop getting those shadows. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to select both of these, and right now if we just look at these and I turn off the wireframe here, we see this kind of faceted look, and that just means that I'm getting this kind of banding of color here. So to fix that, I'm going to select all the polygons by hitting Control A, and I'm going to come down to smoothing groups. I'm going to clear all, and I'm just going to say auto smooth. So let's see what that looks like now. There, now it looks nice and smooth. Let's see how this one looks. Yeah, that looks fine. Alright, so now I'm going to duplicate this to make it for this wall. So I'm going to hold shift. I was holding shift. My keyboard is being really weird. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to take this one and duplicate it, align it to this wall. And I'm going to do pivot point to pivot point, X, Y, and Z all checked. And that should automatically line that up. That's really weird. To the top here. Yeah, that's good. Oh, you know what? It's because I had taken the other ones and drug them away, so they didn't keep the same pivot point. I thought they would. That's on me again. All right, so let's do this. We'll take the one we have here. I'm going to go Affect Pivot Point Only, Align, and now we're going to align it back to the original wall and make sure we're set to pivot points and X, Y, and Z. Hit OK. Okay, now when I duplicate this as a copy and I align it back to this wall and I hit OK, they line up. So that's good. Okay, so now I've got a couple things to fix here. I've got to get rid of the section here. That's easy. So delete. The top part's going to be just fine, so that'll get left alone. But what I want is I want a frame that basically goes around the door. And again, that's a simple thing to create as well. So I'm going to select the wall here. I'm going to select the polygons around the door, and once again I'm going to hold shift I'm going to drag these out ever so slightly and back, lining those up, and create as a new object. So I'm going to select that wall. Let's do a different blue just so we can tell the difference here. Alright, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to select the edges all at the top, drag those down, and let's just set that to 200. Whoops. 200. Nice even number. And then, let's see, this is set at 192. If that's 200, that's 8 units. That's perfect. So then I'm going to take this side and drag this in. And in the X, this is at 308. And so I'm guessing that I can drag this side in. I'm trying to keep these as close as possible to 8 numbers. So I'm going to guess that's going to be 40 or 444. And then I'm going to extrude all of this, and I'm going to extrude it out to where it covers the front of the this framing section. So I'm going to just go to extrude, and I'm going to bring it out just slightly further. That way there's, again, no sort of Z fighting. And I'm going to hit the check mark there. And so now I'll take these, and if we remember the numbers that we had just typed in there, if I bring this over, you can make sure I bring it over to 308. I didn't remember the number, to be honest. And then this one was all 4s. Do remember that. And now that I have all of that, I'm going to just attach this to our wall section. So I'm going to go to attach, and I'm going to attach that all together. I'm going to come back to this one and attach all of that together. So now my wall section and my one wall with a door section look like this. I'm going to go ahead and just save as is right now. So I'll make a new folder in my scenes folder here, and I'll call this modular underscore rooms, and I'll make a new folder called room sections. This is how I organize things. Room sections. Because I'll probably have one in here for references, one in here for textures, things like that. And then I'll just call this room sections 001. Okay. So now basically, since I have all of that, I can create whatever rooms that I want. Now what I try to do is I would create, these are my one wall sections, but next I could have 2 wall sections. So turn on my snap, and I'm just going to show how this works, but I'm not going to create all of them because there's roughly about 20 of them that I end up creating. So this one I'm going to call wall 2 door 0 underscore hallway, just so you can get an idea. So this last part of the naming convention has to do with a designation or a description. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to take this wall, and actually I'm going to hide these other walls just for a moment. I'll just hide this one actually. I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to move this to 0, 0. So it's there. Okay. So I'm going to rotate this. Hold shift, rotate 180 degrees. And the naming for this doesn't matter because I'm going to attach these together. So now I'm going to move this over 256 so they line back up. And I'm also going to go 256 256, and then I'm going to go 256 this direction. And so I've got these are going to be basically my two hallways, or any hallway section that I need. So now I'm going to take this one, I'm going to attach it to that one, and now I've got hallway. So now anytime I need to make a hallway in my game, I can import this into Unity or whatever game engine, and if I hold Shift, I'm doing this in Max, but if I'm in the game engine, it should automatically have snaps set up. You can see how I don't see a seam here, and I should texture in a way that I also don't see a seam. But now I've got this basic hallway set up that I can continue this on and put it together in a way that these carry on all the way down, these carry on all the way down here, and then I'd have angled ones here so that I could do, you know, things like this little inset section here in the game. I could have room sections that have windows already built into them. I could have room sections that have these little kind of cutaways. I can have room sections or hallway sections that have these little kind of pillared parts in the middle. I can have room sections that have door frames in the middle, which I've already kind of got. And that's how this will kind of work. And then the last part of this is just unwrapping. Now, for texturing something like this, the way I try to do it is I do it in a way that I can have all of the walls. So if I had 4 walls, basically, I could have them all unwrapped to the same general location. So I could apply a different texture to all of this, and it's automatically going to update on all of them. So if I have one theme where I've got like dingy hallway, let's say, or dingy room, dingy wall, whatever, and I apply that texture to any one of these, all of them will share the same UV space or same texturing space. That about wraps it up for this tutorial. Hopefully this makes sense. That's first and foremost what I like these to do. And second of all, I hope you enjoyed this and found it informative. So if you have, please give me a like. I'd also appreciate it if you subscribed. I do a lot of tutorials. My wife has also been posting a lot of tutorials in Maya because I primarily focus in 3ds Max. So she focuses on Maya, and a lot of hers are more technical as far as rigging and things like that. So please check out the other videos. I have other modeling. I have introductions to different types of software. But yeah, please like, subscribe, and comment. Definitely comment if you have any other questions or any ideas for other videos you would like. So thanks for watching.